that were asking me really specific questions when we'd chat. My son and I, this week, we were in Japan talking to different folks, like when they found out I was in my 52nd year of life and we're hitting these giant snowboarding jumps. And really only a couple of guys were hitting these big jumps that we found at this cool resort called Rizutsu in Hokkaido, Japan. And they were like, what? You're in your 50s? I don't even get it. What's going on? And they would ask me, certain questions like, well, what should I be doing? Should I get labs done? Which one should I get? How do I know if I'm healthy? How do I know that I can live to be like you and keep crushing the things that I love and enjoy so much in that age? Because most of them were like 20-year-olds or even less than that. And so this episode, I'm so pumped because so many people have asked me this question. Like, I don't get it. Like I'm quote unquote healthy, as my doctor says. I don't, maybe have medical problems, or maybe I do, but they say my labs are normal. I don't feel normal. I feel like crap. Like I don't have the energy that I wish I had. I don't sleep well. I have this kind of cloudiness of the brain, if you will, the brain fog. I don't feel as sharp. I don't have the energy. My drive is declining. I have this stubborn weight gain around the midsection that just won't go away. Doesn't matter what I do. I eat a clean diet. I'm exercising 3 to 5 days a week. Like what gives? And my provider just tells me, hey, your labs are normal. You're fine. This is just part of aging. And I'm sorry, that's crap. That is just not right. And it's a disservice. And I feel horrible when I hear this because it happens every single day to thousands, hundreds of thousands of people, especially here in the US, where traditional healthcare is not spotting things early enough. Like these labs that most of us are getting with their primary care provider are there to detect disease, but they're not there to optimize your performance. Like the normal laboratory range, that's not its job to detect where you are performance-wise. It's just to look for disease, which is kind of like towards the end stage, if you will, because you already have a diagnosis by that point, and they're missing the boat. Like, here's one simple example: fasting insulin, right? How many of your primary care providers have been getting this for you for years? It's been around like 50 years and nobody gets it. I asked my doctor a few years ago, it's been 5 to 6 years. I affectionately fired this doctor because he just wouldn't come aboard with me and was like, dude, you don't need that test. You're not a diabetic. Your fasting glucose is fine. It's like 90. And I'm like, 90 is not fine. My A1C was like 5.6, but I'm like, I want it to be 5.4. I got to know my fasting insulin. Let's get it. He's like, nope, your insurance is not going to pay for it. I'm not going to get it. I'm like, dude, I'll pay for it out of pocket. I need to know this because literally this can detect blood sugar imbalances and what's called, you guys have heard this term, insulin resistance, which is out there in basically about 90% of Americans. Like that is the benchmark. We are measuring our quote unquote normal lab values is a sick population. 90% of them have insulin resistance. And I wanted to know if I had this. So I got it checked. I hope you'll get yours checked. So here's the thing. You don't want to wait for a diagnosis like type 2 diabetes, hypertension, heart disease, whatever it is. And if you have a diagnosis, don't dismay. Most of these things can be reversed. And that's what we're going to talk about. You want to be sharp. You want to perform. You want to be energized. You want to be focused. You want to be strong. You want to be at your peak, both performance, energy-wise. I get it. That's what I want too. And that's why I keep doing things, not only checking my labs, what's under the hood. I check mine 3 to 4 times a year, but I'm also looking at the things I'm doing from the day to day. And we're going to get into what that looks like, because here's the thing. The quote unquote normal labs, like we talked about, are made up of all of the population here in the US. For example, in the US labs, you're measured against the quote unquote normal population. And 90% of them I just shared with you have insulin resistance. So what do you think that means? Your doc's not going to detect it early because they're not looking for it. You're going to get a fasting blood sugar. That's it. Maybe you'll get an A1C, but those two things are not going to tell you early insulin resistance, which you can tell by a simple thing called fasting insulin of up to 10 years before the diagnosis of type 2 diabetes. And I realized that many of you could even have that, or maybe a family member, a relative, because that is climbing at astronomical rates. In fact, it is estimated in the next 50 years that over 50%, over half of our US population will have type 2 diabetes. And that is astounding. Millions and millions of people already have it. Many more millions will get it. And yet this is nearly 100% preventable. You can, yes, CAN, do something. So when we go and get our routine blood work, and usually this is just a CBC, which tells you your blood counts and make sure you're not anemic, your chemistry panel, a really routine Lipid panel, most of these numbers are actually calculated. They're not looking for specific size of the LDL cholesterol, for example, the particle size. They're not looking at that. Most of them don't even measure the total numbers of the different types like LDL, HDL, and certain subtypes. They almost never measure. They just do a calculated example here. And then they measure you against the quote unquote normal population, many of the which, probably 88 to 90% is what the data shows, are metabolically unhealthy. And so your quote unquote normal could mean, yes, you're metabolically unhealthy. Yes, you have insulin resistance. Yes, you could have some early inflammation, signs, symptoms that could lead you towards diagnoses in the future, such as heart disease or even cancer. And your doctor has not even seen any of this. They're not seeing it. So here's the thing. If you want to look like everybody else, like, absolutely go for it. But I'm telling you, that's not who this podcast is for. You guys want to be at your optimal health, right? You're high performing people. You don't take, normal or average as your wish or goal in life. And I commend you for that. You're here because you want more. And I'm going to give you more of how you can get there, how you can get that performance, that energy, that focus, clarity, whatever it is you're searching for. You want to have the strength, you want to have the drive that maybe you're lacking right now. Well, that's why we are here. So here's the thing. There's lots of evidence about this. In fact, there was a recent study that came out that showed that this insulin resistance that I speak of literally is present up to, on average, and I kind of shared this, 10 years before type 2 diabetes can actually be diagnosed with standard labs like the so-called fasting insulin and A1C. And so when you're told your stuff is normal, your labs are normal, my guess is most of the time you're not getting these deep dive labs, and you may have already been in this decline, this 10-year decline. Who knows, maybe half a decade, maybe even a decade before you're told anything is abnormal. So here's the thing with your body. Your body knows something is up. And that's why you have the symptoms of lower energy. Maybe you're gaining some weight around the midsection. Maybe you're not sleeping well. You have this brain fog. Those are early symptom signs that your body's whispering to you and saying, hey, something is not right. You're feeling it. And so you're going to the doctor. Like, I commend you. That's amazing. I'm glad you're doing it. You should be doing that. You should be getting these things checked. But when they tell you, oh, I'm not going to get a fasting insulin, I'm not going to get a highly sensitive CRP, I'm not going to get a particle size on your LDL cholesterol and things like that, like, you might consider looking for someone else, or democratizing this whole thing as it's beginning to be done in many platforms. You can go and get these labs yourself. Like, if your doctor says no, don't take no for an answer. Your health, your life, the way you live your life, your performance, your energy, you can't take no for an answer. Be your own best advocate, because your body, it's telling you something. It might be just a whisper right now. It's not screaming because you're not type 2 diabetic yet. Maybe you don't have these end stage kind of conditions where you already have heart disease, you already have cancer and whatnot. And if you do have these conditions, don't worry. Most of these can be completely resolved with this functional and performance and specialized integrative medicine approach that I like to do with my peeps, because there's so much more out there than just standard medication, if you will, or just standard measures, because this standard or this normal, it's only going to get you so far. It's not going to get you to your best self. Here's another example. I talked about fasting insulin. Well, what about just the simple one that our doctors usually do check, which is your fasting glucose? Well, you know what the normal range for that is? It's up to 100. So anything up to 99, basically from like 60 to 99, is considered normal. And that's a huge, that's 60% change between those numbers. Like, that is insane. Why would you say that there should be a range that big and they're all normal? Well, that doesn't even make sense. Here's the truth. Data actually shows cardiovascular disease or heart disease is actually starting. And anytime you're over 80, especially over 85 in the fasting blood sugar, which is where I was, and I was like, I knew something was up and I had to get this, handled. And so I asked for all these additional tests that we're going to talk about today, like the fasting insulin, for example, the highly sensitive CRP, the particle size in the LDL cholesterol panel, and things like that. And so here's the thing, cardiovascular disease, the data shows, is already starting when your blood sugar is above 85. In many populations, like literally 85, like, holy crap. So you could be between 85 and 99 and still told everything is normal. Your doctor could say, hey, looks great, you're fine, I'll see you in another year. What the heck is happening here? Physiologically, if you look under the hood, the way you feel, you're not fine. You're not fine. There's already things happening, inflammation, for example, that are going to not get better over the next year when you wait for your doctor to check again, right? So here's the other thing. There's so many markers that are just not checked. I already told you a couple, right? Fasting insulin. Who's doing that? Well, docs like me, integrative and functional medicine docs, we're doing that, right? Your primary doc may just be doing a fasting blood sugar. And we already told you how that's not going to get you to where you need, right? Because the insulin can rise up to 10 years before the fasting blood sugar gets significantly abnormal or into the so-called abnormal range, which is then when they say, oh, you probably have a little bit of hyperglycemia, maybe type 2 diabetes is in your future. Like, I could potentially, with these measures and with other, others, you could have a 10-year, ahead of time look at this so that you don't get to the point where you have type 2 diabetes. Like, would that be worth it to you? I mean, I think so, right? Because this fasting insulin is so simple. It's not expensive. It can tell you a lot of things. And this insulin resistance that's so prevalent out there, up to 90% of people, most have no idea that they even have it. Here's another that I do on all my patients: highly sensitive CRP. That's C-reactive protein, highly sensitive version, because that's an early warning sign that you have something going on in your body. You don't feel great, right? You're a little cloudy. This goes up as a warning sign for heart disease that's in your future, for even Alzheimer's, dementia, other cognitive decline, for cancers. This is something that comes up early, or other metabolic dysfunction disorders, such as the insulin resistance, obesity, your weight gain, all of these kinds of things, high blood pressure. All of these things usually start with a low-grade increase in your inflammation. Inflammation is not your friend when it's going on a daily basis, and most docs aren't measuring it. So here's the thing: if you measure the highly sensitive CRP, you'll get some kind of, the check engine light, if you will. If you're checking it, that'll give you some indicator that you got to look a little deeper. Something's going on. It could be early heart disease, could be an early form of cancer, could be early metabolic disease, obesity, it could be insulin resistance. Like, all these things could show up in the highly sensitive CRP. And what that tells you is you got to go deeper. You got to go further, because that's kind of a very sensitive test. In fact, what I love about it is it's so sensitive. In other words, you're not going to miss a lot of cases of this inflammation, but it doesn't tell you exactly or ascribe to you where it's coming from. So you got to keep looking, but it gives you at least the starting info that, hey, we got to get more info. We got to get on the hood, because this could mean that I'm later going to have heart disease or cancer or brain disease, like Alzheimer's, dementia, and all these kinds of things. Parkinson's, they all start with a slightly elevated, highly sensitive CRP most of the time. Here's another: ApoB. Has your doc checked an ApoB recently? And you're like, what the heck is ApoB? Well, it's a cholesterol number that you can have checked. And 99% of primary care docs, I would say, that are not functional and integrative medicine trained, which is most of them are not, this is not included in their profile. It's just simply not. And it's sad. It should be, because your LDL cholesterol just doesn't tell the whole story. Whereas the ApoB looks more at, in detail, all of the particles that potentially could cause atherosclerosis, which is heart disease, right? Wouldn't you want to have this test done? Wouldn't you want to do that? Well, you can get that test done. ApoB, for example. Here's another: as far as hormonal panels, like, so much of the population is getting thyroid disease, right? Hypothyroid is super common. Low thyroid, for example, even hyperthyroid, or inflammatory conditions that you've heard of, Hashimoto's, etc., are out there and increasing, sadly, in the population. That's because also inflammation is rising in the population, and it's not being detected early. And your doc, if you say, hey man, I'm tired, I don't have the energy I used to have, I'm gaining some weight, oh, it could be the thyroid. Well, what do they check? They check this thing called TSH. Yet they forget that's like the universal screening test. That's what I was taught in medical school 30 years ago, but it's not enough, right? It's not enough. You got to go deeper. You got to see what the active thyroid hormone is, called the free T3. The free T4 is the other form that is converted into T3 to become active. These are kind of the endpoints of the thyroid function. So you got to get a free T3, a free T4. You got to also get, there's reverse T3. Almost no doc tests this. It's so important. You got to look at those thyroid antibodies that are out there, because you've heard about it, right? Hashimoto's and other inflammatory thyroid conditions are on the rise, yet most doctors aren't checking all these tests. This is what I do each and every day, because we're missing too many things in the healthcare world that we live in, and it's not awesome, right? It's not awesome. Another thing that maybe you've had some of them checked is a hormone panel, right? Well, typically, like say if you're a dude and you're like over 40, or sadly in this country right now, if you're over 30, chances are, I put money on it, go to Vegas and say all in, that your testosterone level's below where it should be. In other words, it's below like 900 if you're over 30. It shouldn't be, but in most men, I would say over 90% over 30 that aren't on TRT or replacement, their total testosterone is most likely less than 900. Why would you want that? You want to perform well. You want to have the energy. You want to be able to build muscle mass, because muscle is the organ of longevity. And you could be completely missing this, because what does your doc do? Well, they might do, if you twist their arm, if you're over 40, they might do a total testosterone number, but they most likely are not getting a free testosterone. They may not be getting SHBG, which is sex hormone binding globulin, which you need to know all these three numbers at a minimum. You should also get some estrogen and female hormone numbers too, because we have those as guys as well, and they tell us something, right? There's this conversion that happens in guys, especially those that are not metabolically healthy. They're gaining weight around the middle. There's this estrogenization that's occurring, where some of that testosterone could be funneled through this pathway through an enzyme called aromatase and made into, yes, testosterone can go into female hormones like estrogen, for example. Like you could be even on TRT, and that could be funneled through to estrogen if you have an increased aromatase activity, which happens in the fat cells, for example, in the adipose cells that many of us have around the midsection. So you got to get the full picture, because your doc may say, oh, I checked the hormones and they were, quote, normal. Well, you know what normal means? Like often, depending on your age, they'll say that a testosterone of 200 or 250 is normal. Like BS, that is not normal. Normal for a sick population, but is that ideal? Is that optimal? Heck no. If you want to feel great, I would say you need it between 800 and 1,000. I would shoot for 900. And if you're not that, you feel it. That was me. I've been watching mine for several years. And at first I'm like, screw it. This something's got to give. And so I did all these things naturally. I took all these supplements, and I'll get into that in another podcast episode. And I've talked about a little bit before. There's only so much you can do with just supplements, with working out, lifting heavy. Like it helps. It definitely helps. It did not in me, and in basically 100% of the people I've worked with. I've never got their number up to 900, for example, in a dude with just diet and lifestyle alone. I've got them to double their cholesterol, or their testosterone number, which is phenomenal, to literally double it, like just with diet and lifestyle kinds of stuff. Like that's really great data, and that almost never happens, but I've seen it happen. But it still doesn't get up to the optimal level, 800 to 1,000 with just diet and lifestyle, and most people that are over 40, for example. But it can be done through these things, plus adding the replacement and whatnot, that we can get there. Anyway, just at kind of the midpoint here of this, I just want you to know it doesn't matter where you are today. Like, don't stress out. Don't be hard on yourself. Like if you're listening to this and you're like, man, you're telling me stuff that I've noticed. I have this brain fog. I have this lack of clarity, focus. I don't have the energy I used to. I wish I did. I don't sleep as well. I'm gaining weight around the midsection. I can't get rid of it. I'm still living healthy. I'm exercising 3 to 5 days a week. I'm doing, real whole foods, and I just can't. I'm sleeping reasonably, getting my 7, 8 hours. This is just not doing the trick. Like, what the heck? Well, don't worry. That's okay. That's super, super common. These things can all be changed. Both the lifestyle stuff as well as your health, your vitality, your performance, your lab markers, all these things we can optimize and get so much better through, first of all, taking a look under the hood, right? You got to test. You cannot just guess, right? You can't just guess. It's just not going to work that way. And even if you go out and get these lab panels done at some third-party place where you can get them done, often you're left with, well, what do I do now? And they might give you some generic chat GPT stuff. This is some stuff you can do, but it's not specific for you. It's not necessarily coming from somebody who's been there and done that. Like importantly, I walk the walk, right? You guys know, I'm in my 52nd year of life, and I'm as active and healthy and vibrant and have the muscle mass that I did as a teenager, even maybe a little more. Like, who does it? Who's doing that? That's a physician out there that's seeing patients actively like I am. There's not a lot of them out there, but here's the thing. You got to start at least with testing. You can't just guess. Even better if you test and you get a mentor, you get a doc, you get a provider that can help you, that can give you the roadmap, somebody who's actually done it and also seen others do it. Even better, right? Why do you want to walk it alone? You don't need to walk it alone. There's so many resources out there. So don't stress out. We'll get to more things you can do. I'm going to give you a quick little roadmap that will help most people right here on this show today. So don't worry if you feel not optimal today. That's great. That means there's room to improve. There's room to work with it. You want to feel better. That was me. I wanted to feel better. That's why I've been on this journey, and I'm going to help you get there as well. But here's the thing. In the current system, what you can maybe access with your health insurance, with a regular primary care provider, most likely you're not going to get all of what you need. The current system is no good at optimizing health. It might be okay at treating disease once it's there, but not good at preventing it, right? It's terrible at preventing most disease, and even worse at improving your performance, right? Because the doc said, oh, your numbers are normal. Come back in 6 months or come back in a year. How is that helping you? Is it helping you feel better? Are you gaining muscle? Are you losing weight? Are you increasing your mental acuity, sharpness, focus, your energy? No, it's still gradually declining. They're just like, oh, you're getting older. It's part of aging. And that's where I would urge you to just say, you know what? I'm going to get what they call a second opinion. I'm going to get some more info. I'm going to take a look under the hood. I'm going to talk to somebody else. Like, don't take no for an answer. Oh, you're just getting older. Like, BS. There's so much that can be done. So here's the thing. What can you do? Well, here's the good news. There's a lot you can do. And these things are all fixable, if you will. And I'm somebody who loves to get in there and help you get this resolved so you feel better, so you don't end up with type 2 diabetes, so you don't end up with heart disease, so you don't end up with all these other metabolic conditions that are out there, insulin resistance, et cetera, like brain disease, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's. Most of these can be largely prevented. Maybe not 100%, but maybe 90% preventable. Like, that's why I wrote the book, right? Preventable. 5 powerful practices to avoid disease and build unshakable health. You probably read it. If not, grab it. It's a minimal investment, right? 20 something bucks. And you get a lot of that data of what's happening in our world and how you don't have to be like everyone else. You don't have to be quote unquote normal, because normal, especially in this country, is not optimal and it's not very healthy. So here's the framework that I use. I'm just going to tell you, it's not a secret. The first thing you got to test. You got to do the appropriate test. You got to go deeper, a deeper dive. You got to get a look under the hood, test and not guess. And once you have that data, you got to interpret it properly. You can't just compare it to everyone out there that's getting the test done, because that's how it's going to come back to you. It's going to say, well, according to the lab ranges, you're still within the normal range, even if you did the deeper dive test. Here's where you need a little help. You need somebody who's expert at looking at the scale of optimization, right? You want to not just know if you're normal or not normal range. You want to know where optimal is and what that looks like and how to get there, right? So you got to interpret them optimally, not just versus normal or not normal. Then you got to take an even deeper target approach through looking through what is deeper than this. Go another level deeper. If your cholesterol is a little bit elevated, and maybe you even have some of these small, dense LDL particles, which are not the ones that you want, right? You want these fluffy ones that just bounce off the walls. They never stick. They don't clog up the arteries. But so let's say you have a big proportion of these smaller, denser ones. Well, that's good news to know that you have them, because now you can do something. But then what do you do? How do you find out what's actually causing that? You got to go a step back or 2 steps back, target a little deeper, look at what the root cause is. And traditional medicine is horrible at that. They don't get to the root cause. They just say, here's this thing, one of these pills, right? Cholesterol lowering pills. We got tons of them. Most of them end in statin, for example. Many people say statins should be in the water. And I'm going to tell you that there's a role for them. Do I think they should be in the water? No. Do I think everybody should take them? No. Do certain people benefit? Absolutely. Would I prescribe them in certain cases? Absolutely. But may not to every person, like many providers are basically giving them to anybody over 40. Well, I don't think that's always the best approach. You got to target this. You got to be specific. You got to be personalized. And a lot of that's missing. You got to target the root cause. Wouldn't you rather get down deeper, get to the root, so you can not only resolve it, get it better, optimize it, and not have it come back, than just throw a Band-Aid on it? The so-called Band-Aid medicine that we've been practicing in this country for decades. That's how I was taught way back in the day, 30 plus years ago. Band-Aid style medicine. There's a pharmacologic for everything. And here they are. I'm going to prescribe them, right? And I prescribe medication. You're talking to somebody that does prescribe medication when it's really needed, like lifestyle, diet, all these other things. Behaviorally, I go with that first because it's more powerful in the end, and you can actually get to the root cause. So after you find the root cause, you target that, you track it, you adjust it, you make changes, you get personal, you get specific, right? You got to look specifically at what is underlying all this. Oftentimes, it's what I shared with you at the outset. It's inflammation. Many of us have inflammation going on in our body. And then we got to target where it's coming from. And then you got to do additional testing. And then you got to target that area. And usually it's many things, right? It's diet, it's lifestyle, it's exercise, movement. It's your mind too plays a big factor, a big role. Like that's one of the most astounding things I've learned over the years, especially over the last 10 to 15, is that our own mind, if you will, what's between our ears, can play into this significantly, not only to how we live each and every day, like how happy we are, how fulfilled we are, how well we just feel about ourselves and humanity in our life, but it also affects our physiology down at the microscopic molecular, which is much deeper, right, than microscopic. At the molecular level, what happens between our ears affects that. And we have lots of evidence of that. So here's the thing. If you want to get more info, you want to go deeper, well, keep listening here, number one, right? This podcast, about every week, I'm sharing pertinent info and pearls, and it's helpful and useful, but it may not be enough for you. Maybe you need a guide. Maybe you need to work with somebody that has been there, has been through that process, that knows how to do it, somebody who's had specific education. Usually these are doctors that specifically work in areas like integrative and functional medicine. You can go to the website called ifm.org, Institute for Functional Medicine. That's a great resource. Dr. Mark Hyman is a guy that has been involved with this in the training, in fact, including my own. He was one of the first guys that I was following and getting his specifics back when I first got into this functional integrative medicine. Like he was one of the guys I was following closely. He was involved with a group called the Institute for Functional Medicine. They have a great website, tells you who the trained guys are in functional medicine. You can find me there, for example, or somebody that's in your area as well. But you got to get some additional specific personalized help. And so I offer something like this. It's called the Accelerator Longevity Labs and Strategy Session, right? We get deep, we go under the hood. So you got to get the testing done. Test, don't guess. You got to interpret them with not just normal or abnormal, but with this performance lens. And then you got to target what's the underlying root cause and get a plan specific for you. So it's not just having information. There's tons of information out there. You can ask chat to answer about any question you have information, but it's going to be hard to get as targeted and personal as you need without some additional help. You got to have, and then you got to take action, right? But you want to take the right action, the most precise for you to get the results that you want. So just remember, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter where you are now, you can optimize your health and your life. It is possible. This is what gets me excited and out of bed, honestly, each and every day, because I love to share with you ways that you can not only feel better about yourself and your health, but you basically can age in reverse, right? I'm in my 52nd year biologically. I'm 35. Like legit, you can get this testing done. I can help you get it done. But at the end of the day, information and knowledge is just information and knowledge. It's not power. It's not power without the action steps, with what comes next. You got to know that you're measuring the right things. You got to get a plan to do it. So here's the thing. It doesn't matter where you are today. Like, don't stress out. Maybe you got an extra 10, 20, 30 pounds you want to lose. That's okay. No worries. Maybe you already have elevated biomarkers like your highly sensitive CRP. Maybe that's already climbing a little bit. Maybe you have a little bit of insulin resistance. And if you do, don't worry. There's like 9 out of 10 people in the US have that right now. But most of them don't even know it. Well, let's see if you have it, and let's get deeper. Let's find the root cause. This stuff can change quickly if you have the right approach, you have the right plan. I've seen it time and time again, and this is what fuels me. So don't stress. It is possible to feel better. You don't have to accept what you may have been told, that, oh, your labs are normal, you're just getting older. Like BS. I'm going to call BS on that. There's so much you can do. And this is why I'm here with you this week and just about every week podcasting. You can be following me on Instagram, Dr. Thomas Hemingway, Thomas Hemingway MD on Facebook. You go to my website, thomashemingway.com, because I want to provide for you free resources that can help you to take your next best step towards better health, a better life, more joy, just feeling better, more energy. Like, all this is possible. And I'm grateful you're here. You're in the right place. You're with the right community. Give yourself a pat on the back. You're here, and let's keep moving forward. So thank you in advance for following along. Please drop a review if you haven't already. Share this with somebody that may need this information. Maybe they have no idea what an ApoB is, or a fasting insulin, or highly sensitive CRP. It's okay. They're starting, and it's exciting. Until next time, aloha.